Hi, everyone, and welcome to Live Your Happy TV. I am so grateful and so psyched and so excited about my very first guest that I'm hanging out with here on Google Hangout in this happy room. It's very happy, as you will see throughout this half an hour that we'll be sharing with you about love. Scott is the author of Big Love. His inspirational posts and videos have attracted a huge and devoted social media following on Facebook and everywhere else. He's also a regular contributor of the Huffington Post. He lives in Michigan and conducts personal empowerment workshops around the world. Scott's positive outlook and the inner and outer experiences he shares in Big Love offer a striking example of the power of love in action. The power of love in action. And I really wanted to have him on the show because happiness is tied in with love. And the power of love in action has everything to do with that function of our inheritance and happiness. So we're going to be talking to Scott today about his book, about how he sees what love is in action in his life. And I'm sure and I trust he will inspire us big time, in a big way, here on Live Your Happy TV. So I'm happy to have you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'll do my best to inspire big time.
Well, first, a little bit of background on Scott and I. We both have the same publisher, New World Library. They're amazing. They're basically, you know, get this message out of inspiration to the world. So Scott and I have that in common, that we're in this amazing house of love.
Absolutely.
Especially with Kim. With Kim Corbin.
Angel, Kim.
Yeah, Kim is our publicist, and she really does a great job of getting our message out there. And she's the one that actually brought Scott and I together and make sure that we're very prepared. So she gave me a lot of notes and questions here for you. Makes my life easier. So anything that makes my life easier, I'm happy. So muchas gracias, Kim.
Muchas gracias.
So let's start a little bit with you're talking about your book, Big Love. I being an author myself and my book launching a little bit before yours, it's very exciting times for you, correct?
Yes, absolutely. The book's out there in the world. People are reading it. So you know that feeling. It's like, it's wild and it's uncomfortable in moments and thrilling and all of that stuff, you know?
Yeah, and your message is one that is very powerful in regards to your past. And you share, like, it's very similar to my book because I'm very authentic and open about my stories in my book as well. I feel that's just the way I wanted to write it. And it seems that you went that route too, of authenticity, of being very authentic, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, I talk so much about it on my social media page and have for years that I knew it was the only way I could create a book and put one out there, is if I did my best to share my truth as authentically as possible. You know, because I know, and I suspect you know too, that when we do that, we create a space for others to show up in the same way if they want to, and we create a space where others recognize that they're not alone in their struggles. So if we're not sharing just all the beautiful, you know, easy stuff in life, but also the fears and insecurities and all of that, we can connect even more deeply with people.
Yes, and it's very healing because healing for ourselves, first of all, by writing it, you know, getting it out there, and also very healing because I feel that people can relate. They're like, oh, you know, they were able to get through that. I can do that too. So nobody's higher or you know, in hierarchy or I'm better than you. It's more of a oneness. Like I've gone through stuff and we're in this together. We could heal it together. Just like yourself, I had my father committed suicide when I was 3 months old. So I know that your parents also had passed away when you were 14.
Yes.
And I love how you shared that in the book. I shared also the passing of my father in the book, and so many people resonated with it. What has been your experience with sharing your story?
I would say the same. I mean, my parents were murdered. They were shot to death when I was 14, which is also a very heavy story, as is suicide. So I think that my experience around sharing it is it's people get a little overwhelmed initially, or if they don't know that part of my story, it's always a bit of a shock. But what I realize is that, and what people have communicated to me over and over, and maybe you have a similar experience, is that in some ways for people, it makes my message of love and forgiveness and kindness and compassion resonate even more, because they recognize that I'm not just somebody who's living this who's lived a completely jolly existence without any trauma or any grief. Not that there's anybody, if you're an adult, who's lived a completely, jolly existence. But I think in some ways, when we share our greatest traumas and greatest struggles, and yet we're showing up today with presence and mindfulness and love in our hearts, and with a commitment to sharing that with the world, it makes the message even more powerful. That's been my experience.
Absolutely. I feel that when we do share that, especially how we've overcome it, it's a big deal, because a lot of people say, how were you able to overcome your father's suicide? And when I share that, people get very inspired, because they've also probably had, someone that has also passed away in their life, and they're depressed, or they can't handle it. In your case, the Course in Miracles talks about forgiveness, and forgiveness in the Course, which is very similar to the way that you've described it in the readings that I've read. The Course in Miracles talks about looking beyond the veil. So looking at your brother and sister in Christ's vision, which means looking beyond looking beyond the illusion, because they have forgotten who they are. They have forgotten who they are. So in your case, there was something that I read that you talked about how you put yourself in his shoes, and his experience of, because the Course says that we forget who we are because of the ego, and we completely lose ourselves. So everything is love or a call for love. And sometimes the call for love could be very, very, very tragic. Yeah. So I just feel that when I read that, I was like, oh my God, that's so Course related. So I wanted you to speak about forgiveness, because it's very, very intertwined with the teachings of the Course in Miracles.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the path to forgiveness is through empathy. And it's exactly what you said. It was only, when I write about forgiveness in the book, I focus on my path to forgiving the man who murdered my parents. And it was only when I took the time to imagine what it would be like to walk in his shoes, to recognize that no one who's operating from a place of self-worth and self-love and who feels seen by this world would ever make that choice. It's just not possible. And though I couldn't connect to killing somebody, I could absolutely connect to feeling unworthy and feeling unseen, and at periods in my life. And I could connect to being so enraged by something someone out there in the world has done that thoughts went through my mind, like, I wish they would just die. Like, I could connect to all of these human things that we all know and we can all relate to. And it was only when I took the time to do that and to really recognize his humanity, and that I was able to find forgiveness. And it isn't even like I found forgiveness. It wasn't like I said, forgiveness, I'm here, I am, I'm ready for you. It was really that forgiveness found me, because I was doing the work of empathy, because I was taking the time to bring compassion to this experience with this man and to recognize his humanity. And I realized when I would think about him, it was through the lens of forgiveness and love, that something had completely transformed inside of me in my relation to him.
Yeah, it's something that happens with practice and with willingness. The Course says all I need is a little bit of willingness and miracles happen. And I feel that, we talk about here on the channel a lot, the perception of love and fear. And you chose, we all choose at the beginning when we're very hurt and we're in judgment and in guilt, we're judging the situation. We're coming from the perception of fear. But when, as you have just described it, what you did was change your perception from fear to love. Yes. and chose to see him another way.
Yes, and, absolutely.
That's what we could do in life. We can see things another way through fear and love. And what does that look like for you in your daily life, how you're able to perceive more with love and less with fear? Because I know you also talk about fear, being fearless in your book.
Yeah, I mean, I talk about how I'm not fearless in the book. Yeah, you know, that I've let go of feeling the need to be fearless and have embraced. I have a different relationship with my fear. I recognize that, you know, my fear is going to be there. It shows up. That's fear's job. And I used to look at my fear as this bully and this tyrant that just wanted to crush me and put me down. And now I see fear very differently. I see it more as something that's trying to protect me, but it doesn't always do a very good job, you know. And so I move forward with my fear instead of waiting for myself to be fearless. In terms of how I'm showing up with love in my life differently, you know, I ask the question all the time, Maria, like, what does love invite me to do in this moment? You know, how is love asking me to show up in this moment? And especially, well, always, but especially today, because we see the division that's happening in our country. We see the people like attacking each other and screaming at each other and not figuring out a way to communicate from a loving place. And more of us need to be the example of that. We need to be asking ourselves, what might it be like to walk in this person's shoes who is offending me or provoking me or irritating me or angering me? You know what I mean? Like, can I take the time to imagine their struggle so that if I do decide to respond to whatever it is they're saying, I can do so in my clarity, but also with love and compassion? Because if all we're doing is offering a situation anger and vitriol and our rage, we're just adding fire to this fire that's burning out of control anyway. You know what I mean? And we need to operate from a different place. And so many of us are complaining about what people are posting on social media and how people are acting in the world. But a lot of us are acting in a similar way, you know, and I feel like we need to take ownership of how we're showing up. And who am I to complain about this person if all I'm adding is my rage and anger? You know what I mean?
Absolutely. It's powerful because I feel that it's very easy in this world. You know, I always say this world is a circus and it's a CF, and you know what CF is?
No.
A
What's
CF
a
is
CF?
it's clusterfuck. It's
Oh, it's it is absolutely that. I agree.
I guess I could say this because
I use
it's
those
not a
words a lot. Now I know there's the
so
initial.
CF, yeah. So there's so much madness and so much viciousness and maliciousness. It's just in this, calls it the world of duality. It's just a lot going on. And I feel that what you're saying here is just lifting up consciousness and not feeding the fire, not making the fear more real.
Yes.
And that's something that is just so helpful, you know, instead of, you know, choosing, if you're going to watch the news, you know, instead of choosing to watch it from a judgmental point of view, you can also watch it in another way, in a loving point of view, and see it differently versus, oh my God, and judging more.
Yeah, or
Make it more.
if you find yourself feeling depleted because you're watching too much news, making the conscious choice to turn the TV off. You know what I mean? To look at how you're serving yourself. How are you taking care of yourself within the context of all of this? I'm someone who likes to be up on current events. So, but I also recognize when I'm watching too much news or reading too much news and the repetition, you're not really learning anything new. So you're giving your energy over to this loop of negativity and this loop of darkness. And I think that's always a choice. We can in that moment recognize this isn't serving me in a positive way at all. And I'm not able to show up in the same way because of it. And we can make different choices. And not just with news, I think in all areas of our lives, we can bring more consciousness to the choices we're making, more consciousness to how we're taking care of ourselves, and the recognition that when we're taking care of ourselves, when we're really focused on self-care, we will always have more to give the people in our lives and the world on the whole. You know, people tend to feel like they don't want to be selfish when they're taking care of themselves. And I think, well, my God, when I'm being selfish in that way and I'm making sure I get a good night's sleep and I'm feeding myself well, I always have more to give my partner and my friends and my family and these interviews and everything else in the world, you know?
Well,
So,
we're just more, we're in a state of mind that's more peaceful.
yes.
You know, more peaceful, more aligned to truth. We're better to ourselves, and not only that, we're better to others when we're in this state. But I feel that it's so, so important what you just shared, because I feel it's something that collectively we all suffer from, is really buying into the suffering of this world and the stuff that happens, that appears to happen. So I feel like the tools that you're sharing are very helpful. There was something that you shared in regards to a practical way that you ask a question, like, what would love do? What was it that you said exactly?
What does love invite me to do in this moment?
What does love
And sometimes the answer for me, if
Mhm.
you know, if I read something online that really angers me or really disgusts me or disappoints me, and the impulse, because love is often, almost always, the harder choice. We have to be willing and we have to be dedicated, because our impulses, our mind and our ego want to just like attack. If we're attacked, we want to attack back and go crazy. But just by asking yourself that question, what does love invite me to do? At the very least, you may be just called to disengage, because you have nothing to offer the situation that's in any way going to move it forward in a positive and loving way. So the best thing you can do in that moment is just not engage. We don't have to engage. We don't have to participate in every discussion or in every communication that is presented to us. It's not necessary. And if we have nothing positive to offer it, why would we engage?
Yeah.
So
I think also something that's coming up while you're sharing is the discipline and the practice of that. I feel that people
yes.
want to get it right away, or people want to feel good right away, and the mind is like, I say, the mind is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And it's just like crazy, and it's not the
Crazy.
cereal, okay? It's worse than that.
That's
Because
crazy.
the cereal is actually good.
Yeah.
But the mind is crazy. But as long as we practice, and people say, what does that even look like? So what's your type of practice, or your consistency or constancy? Because the mind is crazy. So
The mind is crazy.
how does it work? Mm-hmm.
Well, for me, I mean, some things that help me, and I don't know that I'm always consistent in any of these things, but I'm figuring out and have figured out things that serve me. Meditation serves me really positively, especially guided meditation, I find. Long walks outdoors serve me really, really positively, especially when I'm feeling angry and confused about something. If I can just move my body and be outside, and ideally be among the trees, that's a beautiful thing for me. Dancing my butt off in my apartment and working up a sweat, like releasing
Oh, I
that
love
energy really, really helps me. And the thing I encourage people to do, because what works for me doesn't necessarily work for you. I know there are a lot of overlaps with some of these things, but we all have to figure out what works for us. Writing is an amazing tool for processing anger, for processing sadness, for working through things. And once I figured out what it is that helps me, it's incumbent upon me to make time for those things in my life. And the more I do make time for those things, I found the more I stand a chance of creating more happiness in my life. That's the equation for me. It's like recognizing what stands to create happiness, then taking the time to do those things. And I invite everybody to really, really work on that in their lives. Bring awareness to, like, what makes you feel good usually. And are you allowing more time for those things in your life?
Yeah, that's very helpful, because as I said, there's this it's just the practicality and being practical. That's what I love about your work too. It's very practical, what you just shared. And if you just take the tools of whatever works for you, let's say it's meditation per se, is being committed. Like what I do is, between now and Christmas time, I wake up in the morning for at least 5 minutes. The least I do is 5 minutes of meditation every day, and I have no compromise with that.
Yeah.
And my mind would be like, no, not today.
Yes,
Yesterday you did it. It's enough.
Yeah.
Go have your burrito. Forget about it. Your breakfast. So what I do is I just no matter what my mind says, I just do it, and I feel that when you do, I feel that you see the results, you see the progress.
Absolutely. And you create the habit. Yeah, you create the habit of doing it. And when you spoke about, our mind is crazy, wacko crazy, and it's not really served by us being more centered in our peace and in our love, because when we're more present in peace and when we're more present in love, we're less in our minds. So our mind is always, in my experience, my ego's always trying to take control. It wants to run the show. And one thing that's helped me also in terms of tools is I just don't attach myself to my thoughts the way I used to. you know, especially the ones that don't reflect who I am, especially the ones that are living in prejudice and judgment of other people and aren't rooted in the love that I know myself to be at my core. It's like I recognize, okay, that's what human minds do. This is how human minds think. This is how my mind thinks. But that's not who I am. Who we think, how we think is not who we are. You know, and when I recognize that, it takes away some of that, the power that our thoughts can tend to have on us. You know,
I love
and
that. That's powerful because it's true. It doesn't take away our power.
Yeah, exactly. And also when I tune into, when I really try to bring more acceptance to who I am, and again, I'm not always in any of these things. I'm not always loving, I'm not always anything, and I'm certainly not always accepting, but I focus a lot more on acceptance. And when I'm with acceptance, it's just that recognition again that I'm just human like everyone else. And part of the human story and part of the human experience is to feel everything I'm feeling, to be like human beings are the most beautiful and they're the most disgusting and they're everything in between, you know? And so I can accept that. Like, this is the reality we're living in. And within that acceptance, I can still, as often as possible, ask myself, what is love inviting? And do my best to show up as often as possible from that loving space.
I love that that you brought up acceptance because it's true. It's acceptance is being loving. That's first of all, and that's what your book is about. Big love.
Yeah.
Within the acceptance is self-love.
Yes.
Being loving with yourself, your true self. So
Yeah.
I feel that usually we're upset or we're not happy or we're not in truth when we wish things could be different.
Yes.
If this would be different, then I would be happy. If this would be different, then I would be loving. Then I would be peaceful. But when you're accepting of your circumstances exactly the way they are, that they're perfect, from that space is when you start to awaken. But if you are resisting and not accepting that space, that partner, that situation, what your boss told you in the moment, a death in the family, if you're resisting it, of course, it's not like you deny it. That's something we get into to close the interview, which is feeling your feelings.
Yes.
But I feel that acceptance, true acceptance, is such freedom in that.
I totally agree. And the thing is, it's if you're in a relationship that doesn't ultimately serve you and you feel you need to leave the relationship, you can do that from a much clearer place within the energy of acceptance. If we put all of our energy into resisting something, we have no energy left to actually move forward consciously. That's been my experience. So that even if it's a change I know I need to make, I can sink into the acceptance of that. I can accept the fact that this relationship, this dynamic is not serving me, and move forward with clarity from that place instead of always fighting and blaming
or judgment.
Yeah, exactly. Acceptance creates a completely different dynamic for self-growth and exploration.
I've come to recognize with your work that you have done a lot of I think a lot of your work and how you've been able to heal has been actually feeling and having recognition of your feelings, and not denying them. In my book, I talk about feeling your feelings because I feel that a lot of people in the spiritual sometimes work, you know, they want to pretend with affirmations and positivity all the time and brush things under the rug and pretend you're spiritual and happy. But it's a bunch of BS, you know, brushing things under the rug, you know, it's stupid, you know, it's just like, it's not really powerful. I think being spiritual is being authentic, which we covered, but also within that authenticity is feeling your feelings and really, really, like you said, sometimes you feel good, sometimes you don't feel good, you know, and that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, spiritual people especially, I think, I mean, in general, we live in an incredibly addicted society. People are running from feeling anything uncomfortable. You know, we're numbing ourselves, we're escaping constantly. Whatever we're doing, whether it's alcohol, drugs, shopping, TV, we don't want to feel discomfort. And the only way you can come to understand that you can get through the really hard feelings like sadness and rage and blame is if you allow yourself to be present in them. And there's great value. We're not designed to be, you know, joyful all the time, every single second of the day, nor do we need to be. And I think spiritual people, you're so right, especially that spiritual bypassing that happens, you know, because they don't want to lower their vibration, you know, and feel anything but blissed out. But it's not real. And if you're not operating in what is real, then you're not growing. you're just feeding this falseness, and it doesn't serve your healing in any way, ultimately. And it's just not, and I operated that way for years in my life. I was a Pollyanna, always smiling, always pretending everything was great. It's all good, bro. Everything's good. You know what I mean? I was a California Pollyanna on top of it. So, you know, and I realized what I learned from that is I wasn't really creating the possibility for the deepest connections with people because I wasn't showing up to the table authentically. You know, pretending to be happy all the time wasn't real. I wasn't giving the real version of who I am to people, so they couldn't really know me beyond this facade of like, everything's great, everything's beautiful, you know. And I'm saying this in a judgmental way, and I don't even mean it that way, because I get it. I understand the desire for that, and I also understand on the deepest level, everything is okay. So there is a depth and understanding to that. But in reality, like, let's just feel what we're feeling and be honest about it so we can move through those feelings in a real way.
Yeah, and that's so powerful, you know, and more of that, you know. So I'm happy
More
we're
of
coming
that.
together sharing that.
Yeah.
More of that.
Yeah.
Of that. And it's true, there's nothing wrong with the avoidance, you know, too. It's
Yeah,
part of the
exactly.
process.
Exactly.
But it's beautiful to bring it up, because I also was like that. You know, I had this pretendness for a long time in my life,
Yeah.
you know, like you did, and pretending I was happy, and I was happy because everything external was working. So when it didn't
Yeah.
work, then guess what? Maria wasn't happy anymore.
Yeah.
So it was like a false happiness. But I feel that within the feeling my feelings, even though I didn't want to, because I'm sure it was very hard for you to forgive, you know, the murder of your parents. You know,
Yeah,
of
of
course it
course.
was hard things. You know, it's not fun, and I want people to recognize that and understand that. But at the same time, you start to really begin to live and no longer die, like I like to say.
Yes.
Free, you know, from the mourning. You're free from the guilt, and then you get to experience big love.
Yes.
Mucho, grande,
Mucho
grande
grande
amor,
amor.
grande amor,
Yes.
grande amor. Well, it
Hallelujah.
was really a pleasure to join with you, my dear brother.
Yes. Thank you so much,
um
Maria, for having me. I'm really grateful.
yeah, we were able to cover a lot of juicy, helpful topics, which is what we're here to
Yes.
do.
Yeah, and
And
it
where,
always goes by in a split second. It's so
I know,
crazy, these things. Like,
I know, they're so fast.
I
They
know.
collapse time. They collapse time
Yeah, they really do.
because so much love, you know, love collapse time.
Yeah.
Where can people buy your book?
They should be able to get it everywhere. I mean, in bookstores, hopefully. If not, ask them to order it. And online everywhere. It's an audiobook. I did the reading for it, and it's you know, on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever books are found, as they say.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Wonderful. All right, Scott. Many blessings, and I'm excited for us. I'm excited for all of our brothers and sisters, as we join in. And this is all about oneness, you know, oneness and love versus separation. You know, I feel like sometimes we get caught up and it's all about me, at least in the past. But now this is just a beautiful reflection of, like, you know, love is love is love is love, and we're on this together, you know.
Absolutely.
Um,
100%.
So I'm excited about this video and the people that are going to watch it.
Yeah.
And I just invite the people to, when they watch it, to take what they want from it. Maybe some stuff might make sense. Maybe some of it might. But the whole point of this is just to join and to be truly helpful in this world with each other. And if this video inspired you, I invite you to subscribe to my channel. And also, if Scott's interview inspired you, I invite you to grab his book and check him out on Facebook. He has a great page there of inspiration. I'll make sure to put that on the comments below. All right, Scott, I love you. I
All right.
appreciate you.
I love you too, Maria. Thank
And
you.
just to wrap it up, because we always end with the one last question, which is, how do you live your happy? So really short, if you want to ask, if I want to ask you, how do you live your happy, how would you answer that?
I would say I live my happy in love and in connection. Connection with other open-hearted souls makes me the happiest person alive.
Beautiful. Right there, you guys have it. Love you guys. Bye-bye. Till next time.